welcome to another episode of Thursdays with Third Path. This is our final episode of the 2024-2025 Thursdays with Third Path season. I'm Melissa Davidson, and I am the Director of Programs and Operations at Third Path. I'm really excited to be the guest host today for this very special episode. This is our 15th annual Father's Day celebration, and we have got a really great episode lined up for you. In today's podcast, you were treated to a recording of a live event that had special guests and an audience of parents. In today's episode, I had the great pleasure of interviewing Dr. B. Hibbs, and we talked about her new book, which is called You Are Not Done Yet: Parenting Young Adults in an Age of Uncertainty. While this book is really geared for parents of children in their 20s, we decided to take a look at how some of her parenting tips could be applied, looking at it from a slightly different lens. Then Ed Frauenheim, who's a great friend of the Third Path community, makes a bit of a cameo appearance in this episode. He talks about some of his own challenges in helping to reinvent masculinity at this really interesting moment in our society. So stay tuned for this informative and fun Father's Day episode. Welcome back, everyone. I'm so excited to have Dr. B. Hibbs joining us today. B is a dually licensed psychologist and family therapist. She's the author of several books. Her first book she released in 2009 is called Try to See It My Way: Being Fair in Love and Marriage. More recently, B and her colleague, Dr. Tony Rostrain, co-authored The Stressed Years of Their Lives: Helping Your Kids Survive and Thrive in College Years. And then clearly more was needed. So B and Tony went on to write another book called You're Not Done Yet: Parenting Young Adults in the Age of Uncertainty. And we're gonna take a look together at that book today. This is a book for parents with children in their 20s. But I found when I read the book and I was really digging deep, I ended up reading this from my own personal lens as a parent of younger children. And B's been really kind today to indulge me in a conversation where we look not only at the lessons that B and Tony were trying to help parents of kids in their 20s really dig into, but she's also going to weigh in a little bit on how parents of younger children can use some of the techniques that she's written about to lay a foundation for future relationships with their children. So B. Hibbs, welcome.
Thanks so much, Melissa. It's my pleasure to be here. And the only other credential that I would really want people to know is my most important credential is I'm a mom of two adult sons, and they have probably taught me more than I ever learned in graduate school. And, I always give them a lot of credit for teaching me also who I needed to become. So that is our journey as parents. We become better informed by how we're parenting our children. Yeah.
It's so true. I really love that concept that every person is our teacher and our student. And it certainly holds truth just as much with our own children as it does with everybody else around us.
Absolutely.
So I know our time together is going to go by very, very quickly. And I'm so excited about having had the opportunity to read your book. You and I joked earlier about I just have to show people who are actually seeing this. I loved B's book so much that I couldn't help but put a million little tags in it to remind me of things that were important lessons. So we distilled down to 4. And B and I are going to talk about 4 really basic concepts from the book. One of the things that I read that was really interesting to me was this term about delayed adulting, and whether kids in their 20s or young people in their 20s are actually having some kind of pathology to reaching what's been traditionally known as adulthood, or whether there are just some common roadblocks. So I was wondering if there's anything that you can just jump right in and talk about. What would be some hallmarks of people, parents engaging some kind of third party in helping get past the roadblocks?
Well, before we go with third parties, let me just reassure parents who are often 95% feel super responsible for how their adult children turn out, and moms especially, so much so that in 2024, the Surgeon General issued a warning label that should be plastered across our foreheads going, parenting could be harmful to your health. Because the untold story here is that not only is the mental health of young adults worse than teens, which we paid a lot of attention to, and it's gotten better, which is the good news. But parents are on a race to the bottom with their young adults in terms of their own well-being because most parents didn't expect, me among them, that it was going to go on another decade. So at college, it was like, goodbye, good luck, thinking, kind of like, I think it was a good 10 years before my parents had any idea what I was doing after I left for college, except for what I told them, which was minimal. So today's young adults, and one of the things I want parents to know is there's a lot of public opinion out there that, basically criticizes parents no matter what they do. It's kind of like, you've been, too soft on them. They're snowflakes. You've helicoptered, like, get out of the way. Followed by, they're not ready yet. Hold down the fort. Like, you can't let them go yet. So part of my, motivation in writing the book was when I got really tired of parents being blamed and also wanted to really help parents know, as well as young adults who are super relieved to hear this. It's like, delayed adulthood is the new normal. This has now, it's true in all first world countries. It's been true for 20 years. It's just that we haven't heard it commonly referred to as emerging adulthood, but most young adults and most parents of 20 somethings have experienced it. So they kind of intuitively know it's delayed, but they don't really know why, which has given way to generational blaming, kind of cross blaming across both sides. And part of what I would say is before you go to a third party, really like check your expectations and manage your own anxieties about how your young adult is doing. Because the five milestones that you probably met by the time you were 25 or by the latest 30, including finish your education, get a job, get a life, grow, be on your own financially, find a romantic partner, settle down, have a kid. Okay, those are not happening in any linear fashion now. Six is a new four in terms of college graduation, and prolonged education and a more competitive marketplace has made it harder and longer for young adults to achieve those milestones. And without the financial independence, most of them are not going to, one, leave home. In fact, more than any other time for the past 100 years, including the Great Depression of the 30s, more young adults now return home to live. And that's the majority of them. And this preceded COVID. This was not just a COVID artifact, and it hasn't gotten better since we declared an end to COVID. So, or an artificial end anyway. So part of what's happening is that the world is more expensive, it's more competitive. There's basically been a tsunami that's building at a kind of societal and macroeconomic level since the 1980s, which has had all kinds of large effects on both parent generation and the young adult generation that they were not prepared for, didn't expect. And so they either blame themselves or they blame somebody else, when blame is really not the way we're going to get out of this. Like, both generations have to partner together in order to get to meet the goal of, the launch of the next generation, which is what we're all after. When you need to go to a third party is when you detect signs that, like, these non-linear, that nothing's happening. It's like a stall has become like lack of motivation, kind of behavioral coping that's worrisome. Like, I'm on the screen all the time. There's no balance between my real life and my screen life. I don't care if I get a job. I'm playing games. I'm good. So when you detect and usually it's accompanied by really poor coping, like increased drinking, cigarette smoking. These are like anxiety and depression management tools that are over the counter. So when you see things, and sometimes they're executive functioning problems, as in, like, I'm not managing my time or my life or my priorities, all of those things are treatable. And some of what we have to look at as parents is what runs in my family and what runs in yours. Because the things that run in the families usually have a genetic basis. And so that unless our child is lucky, and I define luck by after 25, your child has not had a major mental illness or addiction or anxiety disorder, then they're pretty much home, scot-free. They're not going to, or if they do, it's going to be a blip, but not a super downward trend. So they may arrive home when you haven't seen them for a few years, and you're like, whoa, who is this person? Like, what happened? So you may be seeing behavior and coping that is alarming to you. And if so, like we talk about, like, how can you go about constructive ways of addressing your fears, addressing your worries? But first, I would just want to reassure all parents out there, the new normal is delayed adulthood.
So, I love that concept that the new normal is delayed adulthood. You said so many important things. I barely know where to start. But one of the things that I think is so important is talking about expectations. So if our expectation is around delayed adulthood, I really do feel like we've got this great opportunity to know this going in for me as a parent of young children, but people who have tweens and teens
Yes.
and children who are already in college, that expect that this is coming. Don't expect that there's going to be a graduation from college and this linear trajectory into we now have an adult. Or just, it was funny, I was thinking recently about friends whose their second child or third child are finishing college. And
Mhm.
I was thinking about the empty nest, and then I was thinking back to your book and realizing, nope, that's probably not what's happening. So kind of buckle up because there's more to come.
There's more
Um,
to come.
there's
Yeah.
definitely more to come. So, oh my gosh, we're going to run so short on time. But one of the things that resonated for me in the book was talking about when a parental role and the parent-child roles switch from being like a parent being in a more authoritative role to being more of a collaborative partner. So, like, when do we know to look for that, and is there something we can do to prepare to be in those roles?
Um, Going back to the concept of like earlier childhood, you should begin to look for that role change by the time your child is 8 or 9. And how to look for it is that if you step back from being a constant problem solver, because by that age, your child has their own thinking and has their own ideas. And so whether it's 8 years old, 18 years old, or 28 years old, your role truly, even though obviously you're much more responsible when they're 8 years old for what they do, is to be collaborative and is to be curious and kind of exploratory with, well, what do you think will be helpful here? Or if they're doing something outrageous, can you think of another way to go about this? So you don't lose your authority, but you use it in a way that's more collaborative and less reactive, less, oh my God, what are you doing? And so it's really an evolution for parents, but the earlier that they learn it with their children, the more the children share with them about what's going on because they don't expect a lecture.
That makes perfect sense. That makes perfect sense. I love the concept about being an askable parent and really laying that foundation from an early time. When you and I spoke previously, you talked about the reaction that you developed. And I can't remember what you said, how long it took you to come up with it, but that when something went wrong, you declared, that's a surprise,
Yes,
and then kind of left space.
I would just say it very calmly because when you think about it, our children read our faces and our tones as are we in trouble? And so what you want to convey is you're not in trouble. Oh, I'm just kind of surprised by that, right? And then it allows the child either a chance to say, well, this is what happened and da da da. But we're communicating with them like an invitation, like, well, tell me about it. Like, what happened?
And that dovetails perfectly into my next question. For people who to choose to give themselves a great gift and to get these book, chapter 4 talks about the list of communications do's and don'ts. And again, where I'm looking at that from a lens of before our children are 20, are there any that you would choose to highlight that would be the top things that we should pay attention to?
The top thing is don't be defensive. And also don't try to bright side things. When your child's had a crummy day, and again, however old they are, don't say, oh, it will be better. Oh, this will pass. Like, don't bright side things because then children feel dismissed. So do adults. If you said the same thing to an adult, they would feel like, hello. So part of it is check your defensiveness, which is usually a reaction when you're in a fight or flight mode and you want to be right. And you may have that like, well, I'm the parent, I am right. But if you want your, child, teen, adult child to talk to you, that's not how you're going to present yourself. Because what you really want is a collaborative, like, well, tell me more about that. Like, I don't understand it. Like, help me make sense of this. So you don't have to act like you're a dimwit, to not be right. But it is really more like, well, we may not see eye to eye on this, but I'm confused by it.
You're opening up the problem-solving opportunity.
Right.
You're leaving space to be co-creators of solutions to problems.
That's it.
And setting that foundation early clearly is so important.
Yes.
What I'd like to share, people who've joined us for the live event, when shortly we're going to have an opportunity to dive a little bit deeper into some of these topics. And one of the discussion groups we're going to have is actually going to look at this topic about how to promote connection so that your children will talk and how to talk so that they'll listen. So if this is intriguing to you and you'd like to talk more about that, we're going to have an opportunity to do that. I've got one last question before you and I wrap up. And that is, one of the really beautiful things in your book was the presentation of some different case studies. And
Mhm.
one of the case studies that's particularly relevant to one of our breakout groups today was about an adult child named Tyler, and it's both the parents and their son that are in distress. That I want to pause there for a second just to go back and reiterate. You've talked so much in the book about parental self-care in
Mhm.
all of these steps. So I just want to bookmark that so we can come back to it after we talk about Tyler and his parents. But one of the things that surfaces in their distress is that there are some stereotypical gender roles where in trying to problem solve together, mom has fallen into more of an empathetic role and dad is really much more hard line. And I'm wondering how much of a shift maybe you've seen in your practice with some of the shifts in gender stereotyping and parenting.
The parents often, and so there is a shift, and we periodically in the book flip things around. So sometimes it's the mother who's like, get out, I'm kicking you out, and the father going, I don't think you should do that. So it can go either way, honestly, and it has been more of gender, there's more gender fluidity in terms of those roles. But I would say culturally, women, mothers feel very responsible for like, I have to understand, I have to be caring, I have to, I have this like nurturing role. And fathers often feel very responsible for like, I've got to prepare this person for the real world. So there is almost like and oftentimes it's because that's how we were raised. So we have to look at our own, the biases that go into, was that a good idea or not a good idea for maybe my mom and dad to have those very traditional roles? If they had them, how did that land for me? So the more we understand, like, where is our bias coming from? And I had to really search for myself, like, I had a bias about being too understanding. And it wasn't until one of my children really needed a tough love mother that I did the hardest thing I've ever done, which is like, get out of the car and I need you to go here and da da da. Because that's what he needed right now. So it's partly reading your child in front of you to go, what's going to help them now? And developmentally, what helps them at one age does not necessarily help them at another.
I think anybody who's been through several stages of parenting knows that this role evolves. And again, as we said at the beginning, we continue to learn and our children continue to teach us what they need.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm taking a quick pause here because we need to turn Ed's camera on. Can we do that so I can have a quick conversation with Ed? Okay. Ed, are you good to go?
And then mute. Unmute.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
I'm Melissa.
Um, Hi. So I want to welcome Ed Frauenheim to our conversation as well. Ed is a great friend of the Third Path community. He's a writer, author, and thought leader on the topic of modern masculinity. Ed co-authored a book, Reinventing Masculinity, and he is as busy as ever writing op-eds and writing pieces for his Substack, Frown Times. He regularly shares insights and personal experiences about expanding traditional masculine roles like protector and provider to include caring, collaboration, and emotional expressivity. I would say if you have not had an opportunity to read any of Ed's work, you need to give yourself the gift of a visit to Ed's Substack. It is wonderful. Ed, I really appreciate the way you write from a place of your like personal inspiration and then how that insight really explodes out to what's going on around us. So you've just heard me talking a little bit with B and B sharing a little bit about the way parents can choose to show up. And I just wanted to give you an opportunity to weigh in on any of that or any of the work you've been doing recently.
Well, thanks, B, and thanks, Melissa, for that really generous introduction. I'm taking notes, B, because I've got a son who's 22 and a non-binary child who's 20, and uh, I loved what you said about the collaborative. Don't be defensive. Work on being curious, collaborative, exploratory. I have come to really believe that that's the way to parent, but I got here kicking and screaming. It took me a long time to get past some of those roles that Melissa, you just were talking about. B, you were talking about the expectation that I have to be the stern disciplinarian, and that so many men feel they have to be preparing for the kids for the real world, but also that we have to. Our identity is tied up in this notion of being the authority, the man of the household, and um, someone who does not take any back talk, that sort of thing. And I think it's really tough for a lot of guys to let go of that and see the richness that can come from parenting in a more fully human way, where we're embracing both the roles of the protector, provider, disciplinarian, but also the carer, the nurturer, the ones who can, snuggle in the bed and read bedtime stories, who will cook desserts with the kids. So there's a lot of greater satisfaction and soulfulness really for fathers than we've historically given ourselves, I think. And B, some of the comments you're making really dovetail with what I see younger dads especially embracing more and more.
I love what you're kind of teeing up for us, Ed, which again gets back to my whole take on this, which is being present early and intentionally parenting and fathering in a way that allows you to nurture will help, I think, get us past a point as the kids get older of feeling like this is the way I'm supposed to be. It's great role modeling for our children. And, you brought up this notion that we all have to live in these different roles. It's not gender specific, it is parenting specific, and it is parenting specific for each of our children and what they need. B, Ed, thank you so much for joining us today.